So I'll now call the regular meeting of council to order, being this Tuesday, January 27th, 2021. First item on the agenda is item 2.1, adoption of the agenda this evening. Councillor Pearson, Councillor MacLean, any additions? Hearing none. All in favor? It's carried. Item 3.1, we do have the adoptions of the minutes of the previous meeting to consider, being June 22, 2021. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Blanchette, any errors or omissions arising? Hearing none. All in favor? It's carried. We have a delegation before us. Popular. Under 4.1, Trans Mountain Expansion Project, Camp Accommodations and Operations Update. Ms. Devick.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me. I am excited to talk about this delegation, or to address the requests of this delegation. So, I always kind of start with this map. It's a nice place for me to stop, and it's very easy for me in my job to get very focused on the spreads that I work in, but I need to always remember that we're so much bigger than that. And sometimes I need to also remember who I've talked to about what. And one of the things that I realized is when we moved the camp out of the Village of Valemount boundaries and we put it into the RDFFG, our TUP hearing took place there. And so the details of the camp and the workings of the camp was presented in that forum, but not this one. So we might have a slight information gap here. So I'm here and I'm hopeful that I can address some of those questions, maybe dispel some rumors, and get us all to a collective understanding of the camp itself. So the first thing that I'd like to speak to is our worker accommodation strategy. It was filed in September of 2017 with the then National Energy Board and now the Canada Energy Regulator. And there's also an additional filing under the British Columbia Environmental Act. So our strategy describes our temporary worker accommodation approach. It addresses the potential environmental and social impacts, and it outlines key mitigations and actions. And part of that worker accommodation strategy was going out and doing a lot of consultation with local governments, with local tourism, with local chambers. And this, of course, the village was part of that back in 2017. As far as our worker accommodation engagement goes, as I mentioned, we also had Indigenous communities, we had first responders, police, fire, ambulance, community service agencies. We had our construction contractors also weigh in on it, understanding that they were going to bring the realities of what our worker accommodation was going to look like. And we had other agencies and local authorities. So depending on where we were in the very colorful map, we had additional stakeholders involved. So what we started off by doing was assessing local accommodation capacity and community interest for workforce housing. Just because a community had a lot of accommodation doesn't necessarily mean that they were interested in housing workers. For instance, we looked at Kamloops, and Kamloops is known as the tournament capital, and they host a lot of sports events. So the question was, you have a lot of accommodation, but are you willing to host workers? So we attempted to make sure that we didn't make any assumptions as we worked through our strategy. Our approach was to balance economic benefits for local accommodations, retail, and service providers, but realizing that that's going to create increased demand on accommodation services and could impact the community as a whole, whether that be through resources that workers would use while they were here. So we, on the whole project, decided on a mixed approach. We were going to use local commercial accommodations, and we were also going to use temporary workforce accommodations, aka camps. They reduce pressure on community accommodation, but also provide potential positive economic effects related to workforce housing. We knew here that we would have more workers than we did have camp space. And then we applied for our camp. We applied for a slightly lower amount than we knew we would ultimately have. In this mixed approach, we decided on full temporary workforce accommodations are planned for 5 locations in British Columbia: Valemount, Clearwater, Merritt, Hope, and that's right, Blue River. The Valemount location, as I previously indicated, is in the RDFFG. That property is the Valemount Community Forest is the landowner. We have 600 beds there, and the occupation date started in July of 2020. The one that I think is raising a couple of eyebrows is the Blue River location. Previously, last year, after going through our workforce accommodation needs and looking at the effects of COVID on a lot of accommodation providers, the decision was made to no longer proceed with the Blue River location. Now, a year later, looking at the effects of COVID on our project and the fact that the project is tended to be in service by December 2022, that's a mechanical completion of December 2022, we realized that the workforce numbers that we need to host in this area in order to meet that completion date far exceed the available accommodation options here in Valemount between local accommodations and the camp. The Blue River location is 550 beds, a slightly smaller space than here in Valemount. It's on Crown land, and the development will start in Q3 of this year. The fencing of that location took place on Friday of last week and was completed on Sunday. That site is completely fenced and secured, and we are now working through the OGC Oil and Gas Commission process of providing our notification to begin work on that site. Within our camps, they are full service facilities. They are all private bathrooms and private bedrooms. There's no Jack and Jill spaces as industry terms where 2 units would share 1 bathroom. Everyone has their own bedroom and their own bathroom. There is laundry on site. There's full dining, which provides breakfast, bagged lunch, and dinner, and it shifts in timelines depending on when our workers need to start. We have a lounge with controlled access to alcohol with a maximum of 2 drinks per day per worker. It's controlled by their cards. When they scan in, it pops up for the bartender. They can see that they have not exceeded their maximum allowable drinks, and that's how our lounge works. We have recreation facilities such as a movie room, gym, we have cardio rooms. All of those looked very different during COVID, but we tried our best to ensure that our workforce could have some of the normal amenities they would have at home. And of course, we have health and medical services. We've worked very closely with the local doctors here in Valemount and the clinic to ensure that we have open lines of communication, and they can let us know if they're seeing abnormalities or extra impact to them if our workforce happens to be accessing medical services through there. Our medical services, of course, looked a little bit different during COVID. We had COVID screening units. We also, in conjunction with Northern Health, used antigen testing, randomized antigen testing of our workers so we could get on top of any potential COVID cases, potentially asymptomatic, potentially before they showed symptoms, and we had great success with that. And it actually got rolled out into the interior health camp locations, but with Valemount being the first. Each site will be developed to include, so will be as in Blue River and have been as in Valemount, to have wastewater and sewer, solid waste management, drinking water, power, highline power, internet and cell coverage, and security. I'll go back to a couple of them. As far as wastewater and sewer goes, of course, here in Valemount, we worked with the community very nicely, and we had an upgrade to the facilities here. In Blue River, we will be looking at determining how that wastewater will work. We do know and understand that wastewater cannot be trucked interjurisdictionally, and so it will need to be processed in Clearwater if we were to bring it south. As far as internet and cell coverage, this is always a lovely hot button topic. We did actually work with TELUS to increase the internet and cell phone coverage within our camp. What does that mean? It should mean that you see no difference to your internet and cell phone coverage, because the intention of that was to merely mitigate our workers. However, once the project is completed, those resources will stay in place without our workforce. I know that there are always forums in which individuals have questions or maybe even complaints about internet and cell phone coverage. And if people are feeling or experiencing any ill effects of that, and they believe it's due to our camp, they can definitely use our info@ or our 1-866 number so that we can actually get those and attempt to look into them with TELUS. These are the typical interiors. These are actually taken from the Valemount camp itself. So in the top left corner, we have a bedroom complete with television. There's a small working desk there, and you can see your bathroom. To the middle right, that is our gym facility within the Valemount yard, or Valemount camp, pardon me. And then the lower left is our dining hall. Before I go on, I should add, in each of our camps, as part of our ongoing commitment to health and the COVID-19 pandemic, a single box, some people might refer to them as trailers, was dedicated to COVID quarantine units. So if we have an individual who either is a positive COVID case or a suspected COVID case or a close contact of a COVID case, they get moved from their bedroom within all of the rest of the units and put into this quarantine unit so that they can get additional medical help. And more importantly, all of the air units, all of the air handlers are independent within that quarantine unit. So they aren't being recirculated within the quarantine ward, and they weren't being circulated within the rest of the dormitories. Thank you. As far as our workforce management strategies go, and this is where I'm going to the first section was what is the camp and how is it working? The second section here is our management strategies. Something that I should add is that our camp in Belmont is currently at capacity, minus those quarantine units that we can't use within our normal capacity. We are at capacity. And as far as how a worker would get assigned to the camp versus how a worker would be able to use their LOA in the community, it's based on a hierarchy level. And if there are pockets of our workforce that can be easily taken out. So for instance, there are hundreds of people in a mainline crew. However, there might be a crew of 40 surveyors. And if we have more workers coming in and we need the space in the camp, those 40 surveyors might be the easier group or pocket to take out of the camp to use their LOA within the community. If workers can't secure accommodations within the community, then we will work with them to keep them in the camp. I have yet to experience a worker who has been offered LOA who has asked to remain in the camp. There's a little bit of a chuckle there because it just would not happen. Nevertheless, now let's get into our kind of mitigation and management strategies. So we know that our workforce is large and in charge, and they are very prevalent in the community right now. So we have a lot of mitigation strategies in place, and we report routinely to the CER and to the BCEAO about those strategies. We do have a strong emphasis on maximizing local employment and business participation that will reduce the need for incoming workers. At last I checked, I believe that there are 64 local workers working within the Valemount area. As far as employment and training goes, we did admittedly have a bit of a stumble when we first started on the project in this area. There was some Belmont local voices that brought this to our attention, and I realized it as well. We had some gaps in our processes that was not maximizing the local accommodation and the local number of workforces. So we have remedied that, and as I said, we have 64 people working right now on the project, and we have a variety of employment opportunities. And there are still employment opportunities going on within this project, and there will be past the December 2022 date because we still have to work through reclamation. So transmountain.com/jobs and transmountain.com/careers. Careers would be if you're looking to become an employee. Jobs, if you're looking for contracting opportunities, are still very relevant right now and will be past the mechanical completion of our project. We developed a project-wide worker code of conduct to guide behavior on and off the site. We have a variety of aspects to it, from drug and alcohol policies, health, safety, and environment, respectful behavior and anti-harassment, any workplace violence, or after-hours conduct. In addition, a number of rules have been developed to govern workers within the accommodation setting, as far as their use of facilities, their parking, their search protocols. We do have dog searches that go through our camps at randomized times looking for contraband, and it happens at randomized intervals, and the results are usually very favorable to our workforce adhering to our codes of conduct. Of course, there have been instances within the community where workers have not adhered to our code of conduct. Some of them have been brought to my attention, some of them have been brought to the attention of the staff, and immediately we launch an investigation with our robust security team to determine what actually happened. People have been fired. And that is the biggest stick that we yield, is that if you are not going to adhere to our code of conduct, you will not work on this project. And it's not just that you will not work on this project for Leadcore or Leadcore Seacham or SRLLP. You will not work on this project from Burnaby to Edmonton. It's a very serious repercussion, especially if you're sitting in one of the unions that works on this project. It's not something that our workers are looking to get involved with. So we do generally see very good code of conduct behavior. However, we do have instances of it. We have a very large number of workers in the community, and we can't be guaranteed that everybody's going to be acting above board at all times. We have termination being the ultimate disciplinary action. And then in the subsection, we were talking about accommodation managers because sometimes we have workers in the camps that aren't being respectful to camp staff. Maybe they didn't like their dinner. Maybe they find the check-in policy particularly frustrating, but we do have accommodation managers and they're accountable for the overall safe and efficient operation of our accommodation. And the reason why I give special attention to that is a large number of local workers are working as camp staff. This one's a pretty easy slide. Trans Mountain has a zero tolerance policy for drug and alcohol use on the work site. We have no alcohol permitted in the accommodation rooms. That's why we have a lounge. You can drink in the lounge, you can drink your 2 drinks per day. There's absolutely no alcohol in the rooms. As part of the searches, alcohol is included. The camp communities, like I said, we have our controlled lounges. However, they are staffed by service professionals, much like any other restaurant or bar in town, and workers over the age of 19 can purchase that limited number of drinks per day. We went through the liquor permit hearing within the RDFFG, and we actually had no instances of local comment, complaint, or concern. As far as our accommodation security plan, it's been very comprehensively developed for each location. I'm sure you can't miss our SIMP security trucks. They are a PPE version of a greeny yellow that just kind of burns into your retina, but you know where they are. They manage, and it's managed by our local Indigenous security company, and that's through SIMP. And they've had a number of really great training and mentorship opportunities within there. The number of workers that I refer to in community does not include the number of Indigenous workers from SIMP and other bands, strictly speaking, Valemount. Going back to the alcohol consumption, we have a quiet hour and we have a curfew for our site. Workers who violate the curfew get red flagged when they come back through the gate, and in the morning they have to have a fit for duty evaluation. So anybody who comes in late, you're automatically opening yourself up for a fit for duty evaluation. I previously already mentioned contraband detection and enforcement. Our management and training, as wherever possible, now that we are, I'm scared to say it, now that we are in a less, now that some of the COVID mitigation measures have eased up, busing is an opportunity for our workforce, so we are using that. There are still obviously a large number of trucks that get used, and ATVs, UTVs. As far as recreation goes, hunting, fishing, and gathering is strictly prohibited along the right-of-way for our workers. It's not an opportunity for them while they're at work to be, looking at a really great spot to come fishing on their day off on Sunday. There's no recreational access off our right-of-way for our workforce. All of our workforce go through training, which includes community orientation, which talks about SIMP, and we've had inputs from groups like VARDA and YORA and Tourism Valemount to try to highlight opportunities for workers to recreate here in town. They also go over the Worker Code of Conduct, cultural awareness training, and environmental compliance and education. We have a pretty heavy schedule here. It is a 6-1 schedule, so that's Sundays off. And the Ledcor Seacham schedule allows for time off along the long weekends, but they are here for long amounts of time. And so what we try to do is we make sure that they have on-site recreation and leisure amenities. We're shuttling people into town should they need to come, and they don't have access to a vehicle. We kicked up the internet and cell service so that people can Zoom or Skype or FaceTime with family members to feel that good connection. We have our on-site health and medical services, which is not just related to physical health, but it's also mental health and counseling referrals. And we also have other employee assistance programming. If people are going through drug and alcohol addiction or family counseling or anything along those lines, we look to support all of our workers when they're in our care.
This is a great segue, Ms. Dutta, before we get into COVID. Just want to get council support. I know there's going to be questions at the end, so 15 minutes have come and gone, long gone. So I'll see if there's some council support to continue the delegation. Councillor G, Councillor Pearson, any comments on the extension of the delegation? All in favor? It's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't want to make your long evening longer, but I wanted to make sure that you guys had a good understanding of what we're doing.
We are enthralled, so please continue.
There will be a quiz at the end. So as far as our COVID-19 protocols, they've been very effective. At the beginning, we're doing temperature testing at every extra entrance and exit to the camps. The public health order for Northern Health has eased that for us. We had mandatory masks in very specific areas of the camp, markers to ensure social distancing. You must be 6 hard hats apart, 2 pickup trucks, things like that, enhanced cleaning and sanitation protocols, and we had people participating in COVID training. We did a third-party qualified medical consultant, which is OEMS, who was brought into a lot of our consultation back in 2018, 2019. They're back. They've partnered with SIMP. So they have a joint venture partnership for medical in this area, and they have been a great help with COVID planning and response. As I previously mentioned, we have the random on-site testing, which Northern Health was very happy with, and we continue to do right now. Quickly, if anybody has a COVID symptom, if they're at the site, they are asked to self-isolate until we can start doing those contact tracing protocols. If they're staying in the camp, they go to one of those isolation rooms. Their equipment and their belongings are respectfully brought to them, but they're not allowed to go back into the regular dormitory wings. They follow the medical direction, and at that point in time, we start our process of contact tracing close contacts. Sometimes people really forget who they come in close contact with, so sometimes that can take a couple of days. We work with Northern Health on all of these things. If a worker is tested positive, they follow directions from public health. At that point in time, it's firmly in their hands, and we are merely assisting with that. Then if they are positive, we hand over all of our materials to public health about contact tracing. We ensure that health authorities and government authorities are involved, and we work in conjunction and side by side with any of those groups as necessary. I know that there were questions about COVID in our camp in relation to this community. We do follow the guidelines of Northern Health. If Northern Health deems through our contact tracing and their own that there was a potential for a COVID positive individual to have come in contact with community members, they put out a bulletin. It is not our decision to put that out. It is firmly in the hands of Northern Health, and we help with any way we can. As far as ongoing engagement and monitoring, we do that through the construction of the process of the, through the construction of the project. We have an accommodation committee in which we speak with the village and also the RDFFG. We have our confidential reporting line if any of our workers feel like the accommodation isn't up to what it should be. We have engagement roundtables with Indigenous groups. We have roundtables with our camp groups. I was just on one this morning. Some of them involve camp management in Trans Mountain. Some of them bring in actual workers who are having almost like a delegation for ourselves. And so we use every possible channel that we can. Whew. All right, well, that was a lot of information, but I thank you very much for the opportunity to provide that. And I kind of feel a little bit foolish that it hadn't been provided previously. I looked through my Swiss cheese and realized that by presenting it to the RDFFG, it didn't necessarily make it through here. So I greatly appreciate your time and the extension of time in order to be able to present.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Devick. Again, I'm sure council is enthralled and looking forward to having questions and comments. So please, council, motion to receive. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson. Questions for the delegation. Councillor Blanchette.
You mentioned the quarantine units. How many beds are put aside for that out of the 600?
At this point in time, it is 2 of our dorm stacks, so it's 40 beds.
Okay. And that will continue to be, there'll always be that?
As long as COVID,
Yeah.
and quite frankly, at this point in time, Northern Health is looking at an amalgamation. We always had a camp medical service plan, and there was a communicable disease portion of that, but it was mainly related to like gastrointestinal types of things that would break out on cruise ships. So now the request from Northern Health has been to merge that communicable disease plan with our COVID plan. And so as of right now, those quarantine units will remain in place.
And one more question. So if you needed more beds, could you bring in more pods? Like, is there room at that camp to bring in more?
So the application that went forward to the CER specifically stated it was 550 beds. That's what all of our consultation was done based upon, and so we cannot increase that without going back to our regulator and going back to do all of our consultation. In addition to that, that site is jam-packed. So we would have to be looking at extending that site, which would also require that we go back to the National Energy Board and ask for either an addition onto that site or some other amendment to the site. So at this point in time, 550 beds is all that can be on that location.
Okay, thanks.
Anything further, Councillor?
No, thank you.
Councillor Pearson.
Can't believe there was only 2 questions over there. I've got a list. So we've got a camp capacity of 600 and you're at capacity. What do you estimate the number living off camp in our community is?
So currently, right now, there's 1,100 workers in the area, including the camp.
Okay. So
We
you
report on those numbers weekly to the to Northern Health, and we need to delineate as to who is a local, who's living in local accommodations more than 3 months, who's been living in a local accommodation for less than 3 months, and who is living in camp accommodations. So we report out on that weekly. The health clinic has asked for those numbers. Rather than getting them directly from Northern Health, because it can be a little bit tricky. And so we are providing those numbers to the health clinic and would be happy to provide them to staff here if that was something that was of interest.
Okay, yeah, I'm just thinking because if you're looking at 500 extra employees in the community, a good number of them have families here, so we're significantly over the 500. What are we guesstimating for manpower increases leading up to the third quarter start on Blue River?
Yeah, so with the Blue River camp coming online over Q3, Q4 of 2021, the intention is to put a rig camp into the Blue River site so that construction workers can live at that site rather than in community like we saw with the Valemount site here. There has also been conversations about adjacent communities to here and whether or not they would be able to provide any accommodation options. Previously in our consultations, there wasn't much appetite for that, but that was also back in 2016. So a lot has changed since then.
Not a lot of communities between here and Blue River.
No, there isn't, but there are north.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're gonna throw this one out there. It's kind of the white elephant in the community. Food security issues. When we talked the first time a year plus ago, I raised the concern of food security with the number of people coming into town with a grocery store that was kind of capped out with our local population and tourism. There was talk that you guys would be able to provide food provisions for your employees in the community as far as a food truck, because nothing happened out of that, as we can tell. Has there been any further conversations with that for our community?
When we discussed this, the understanding, or we knew that there's a certain tourism population that comes into the community, and last year that didn't really happen. It was fulfilled by our workers. And so if we were to net it out, there really wasn't that many more people here. There just wasn't tourists, it was us. Of course, now we're running into slightly different restrictions being lifted. And so the number one mitigation tool that we have is information. And that's being shared, and there's been conversations about how that workforce projection numbers can be shared with businesses in the community to allow them as independent businesses to make decisions on how they bring in their provisions. Of course, we have 600 workers in the camp who receive their breakfast, their lunch, and their dinner every single day. If there were businesses in the community that wanted to look at additional options, Trans Mountain would always listen to those. But the number one goal that we have is to provide information for independent businesses to be able to make their own decisions.
Okay. We'll leave that for there. You mentioned the internet and fiber for the camp, that alleviates the community for the 600 people in camp, not the 500 plus that are in the community.
That's correct.
We do see a significant lag time unless you're fortunate enough to have bought a Starlink system. Not that I know anybody. Not that I know anybody here, but yeah. So I mean, I'm really hoping too with the future plans out there for cell service that's going to help our whole community. But yeah, because at this point, yeah, we're in tough shape.
Yeah.
So.
There have been numerous conversations up and down the line about, even selfishly, just our own workers' ability to have safe connections when moving from community to community. And then, of course, there's that legacy leave behind. We do have a system that is monitoring the pipeline, and it's a new fiber system. And so, of course, as a project, we're always looking at ways to optimize that fiber. And hopefully, we'll be able to see something come of that.
A few little breakout boxes would be nice for that.
That would be really nice.
Okay, that's the highlights for me.
Awesome. Anything else from council? Okay, just gonna go back in time here for a minute. You mentioned code of conduct in and around both the community and at the camp. My question is towards the lounge facilities. You have a maximum of 2 drinks. What's to stop me from trading my card with somebody that may not want their 2 drinks for that night?
I asked that very same question when I first heard about the lounge. All of our service staff are instructed, and as part of their training, they have to ensure that the individual who is standing before them is the individual registering to the card. Now, of course, there could be further hijinks, but we have Serving It Right. We have staff in those facilities additionally to be able to see if we have individuals that are circumventing our rules, and we also have additional security in those locations. We do our best to ensure, and we have not had any incidents in this Valemount lounge when it comes to overindulgence.
Thank you for that. 64 local hires with 1,100 workers currently on the pipeline. That's around 5%. What was your target?
We actually don't have a target. We don't have a target. And as far as those 64 local hires, those would be 64 local hires that got hired directly, not contractors, contracting companies. To date, right now, we have 41% of our workforce are from local pipeline communities. We don't have a target because our intention is to maximize.
Thank you. And then COVID. Our community vaccinations here, we were fortunate per capita to be in the top 10 percentile of the province. Thank you. A good uptake there for the 3. We just had one over the last weekend. What percentage of the 1,100 in your workforce do you think, or can you say, took advantage of your industrial vaccination programs?
We do not ask workers to disclose their vaccination status. However, we do know that in our vaccination clinics, we had 80 to 90% of all of our eligible doses used. Now, we don't know if that means person A got their first and their second and they're fully vaccinated, or if it was somebody that was only in community for a short amount of time and only got one. But we do know that Northern Health actually ended up giving us additional vaccines because our uptick was so great.
Thank you. It's good news. 80
Very,
to 90,
very good news.
80 to 90% of your doses used. And then another health-related question, and your workforce. How has the relationship been building with our local health center? And particularly going back to our initial conversations where they would have had most emergency calls filtered through that emergency ward. Are you seeing more or less, better or worse communication with our local health center?
So I just had a meeting with Dr. Markham and some of the administrative staff of the Valemount Health Center a couple of weeks ago, and we had an anecdotal conversation about how things were going. The request that I made is that they pull the data from their records so that we can start building more firm statistics. A lot of it is anecdotal at the moment. We're asking them, of course, we have doctors with our OEMS staff that could maintain confidentiality. It's me working on this process, so we're just strictly looking at number of emergency callouts, number of off hours, and because there is always a question of additional resources for them, and whether or not our workers are accessing the clinic as opposed to our medical facilities, because even workers who are in community are able to access the medical clinic at the camp location.
Excellent. That's all for me. Anything further, Council? Councillor,
Quick comment too,
come back yet?
on the code of conduct. I will say, your code of conduct has been working. I mean, the behavior in, in the community has been awesome. I mean, that's one comment we do hear from community members once, they elbow their way through the crowds. But, yeah, the overwhelming response has been about the behavior, so.
I know that there's been several fantastic events. There was just a golf tournament that was held that raised $4,000 for the food bank. There was lighting installed at the daycare. There was a very generous donation given to the fire department. The workers in this community are very generous, and they know that you are also generous with your community. And so it's a very nice symbiotic relationship, and we hope to continue it past 2022.
And I love to play ball.
They do.
Thank you very much, Ms. Devick. It was
Thank you.
always a pleasure to have you here. We really appreciate, as a group, hearing from you, and as often as we can.
Yes, I'm very excited again to be back. So
Not
I
on
look
that
forward
thing?
to it. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. Any further discussion on the delegation? All in favor of receipt? It's carried. Thank you. We do have a few things under correspondence for action. Number 6.1, the BC-wide inter-community bus network. There is a request for resolution to UBCM. There is a staff recommendation here that the request be received and filed. What's council's wish? Councillor Blanchette, Councillor G, discussion. Councillor Blanchette.
So first, I'd like to thank John for caring about our community in this matter. Let's hope that this initiative from NDIT works. If we still have this issue again next year, I know that the province has put in $7.9 million in multi-year funding for this, for transportation in the north. So let's see, NDIT is going to be the administrator of it, so let's see what happens, and then if we need to, we can bring this back for next year. It's important when we have our community members be so involved, and I would just like to thank him for his constant involvement, because it's wonderful to be engaged, and he offers some really good, thank you, John. Sorry, my brain is shutting off. Yes, thank you, yes, okay.
If anybody else has anything on the BC-wide community bus? I'll comment. Again, ditto. Thank you, Mr. Grogan, for the really diligent work. I also did some digging. I had staff at UBCM bring up the past resolutions that were received by the membership during the resolution sessions, 6 in total in the last couple of years, with the last one with no response from the province as of yet. However, I will, and this stems back to 2013. I do, if I can find it, maybe not here, but the province is willing to partner with communities to provide local transportation through BC Transit, and local governments must also be prepared to commit their share of transit funding. That being said, kudos to the private sector and the Thompson Valley charters, who have really stepped up for passenger service through our area, Kamloops to Edmonton, twice weekly. So I concur with you that we entertain this in January when the request for resolutions come up. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 6.2, we have a request from the Belmont Area Chamber of Commerce.
I'd like to step out as I'm chair of the chamber.
Thank you. Six point two, the Valemount Area Chamber of Commerce request for waiving of tent fees. There is a recommendation here that the tent rental fees for the Valemount Area Chamber of Commerce Golf Tournament to be held August 28th, 2021 be waived, subject to the VACC providing the required damage deposit to the Village of Belmont prior to the event and complying to the requirements of Policy 12, rental of village facilities and properties. What's council's wish? Councillor MacLean? Councillor Pearson, in favor? Discussion? Is anybody golfing in it?
I showed some interest. I'll have to see the scheduling.
Okay. All in favor? It's carried. Can somebody please retrieve Councillor Blanchette? Thank you, Rashmi. Why don't you just go ahead?
Your worship?
I'll introduce it first.
Okay.
Fees have been waived, Councillor.
Thank you.
6.3, Valemount Senior Citizens Housing Society request for waiving of tent fees.
At this time, I'd like to recuse myself as I'm a director of the board.
Thank you very much. Councillor MacLean. Ditto it is.
It's just you and I. No.
You'll probably be out there for a while. It'll be robust discussion. So we do have a request for waiving of tent fees from the Valemount Senior Citizens Housing Society, and the recommendation here that those rental fees be waived subject to the provision of the required damage deposit to the Village of Valemount prior to the event and in compliance with the requirements of Policy 12, rental of village facilities and property. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor G. Discussion.
This is fabulous.
It's one more step getting us all back together again.
Yeah.
Further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Ms. Narian, please. So good to have you back, Rashmi. Although you're stealing some of Michael's walking steps tonight. Those fees have been waived.
Thank you.
6.4, an invitation from Northern Health for community stakeholder meetings. What's council's wish? Like to meet? Councillor Blanchette,
I think it's always good to keep that,
you'd like to move that first?
yes, sorry, I'd like to move that.
Seconder, Councillor Pearson, discussion, Councillor Blanchette.
To keep that line of communications open. We may think of things between now and then. One possible thing I think we could discuss is a partnership about housing. I mean, we know that they've got people wanting to come here. We're having an issue with them trying to find accommodations. Maybe we need to dig deep and look harder and see if there's something we can do to help them, help us.
Good subject matter for sure. There was 2 dates on that. It was the 13th and the 15th?
That's correct.
Yeah. Does council have a preference?
I would prefer the 13th.
Yeah, usually UBCM is a little bit quieter on the Tuesday.
And you get them fresh right out of the gate.
Let's crush them. I mean, collaborate.
Yes.
So, we don't need an amendment for the 13th?
We'll take that as the original motion.
Thank you. You got the spirit? of it?
Yes.
Thank you. Further discussion?
We just need a second.
Oh, wait, we had Councillor
thank you.
Pearson. Further discussion? We'll be meeting with Northern Health on the 13th. All in favor? It's carried. Pretty light reading file before you this evening. Is there anything in there that council would like to address? Raise. Councillor Blanchette.
So item 15 was a letter of thank you to Judge Brecknell for his years and years and years of service to the community. We're going to be able to send out a letter?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is anybody able to attend? There was an offer of invitation.
On August the 5th?
Yeah.
Good question.
Well, we can check and see, but just to be aware of it.
I'd be happy to attend on behalf of
Okay.
council. And I'm absolutely in awe of Judge Brecknell's work to our, within our community. And absolutely be outstanding to send him a thank you letter, for sure. Is there a seconder? I guess I shouldn't have promoted discussion before getting a second.
It's okay.
It's late.
Councillor Pearson, I'll take that as a second. And I'll just not repeat what I just said. Further discussion around the thank you letter to, of the request from Mr. Buckley. All in favor? That carries. Anything further, Councillor?
Item 16, the Belmont Community Forest AGM and Tour. I just wanted to find out on the 15th, where is that being held?
Administration.
And what time?
We'll get back to you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't
Okay.
have that answer. I can reach out to them and ask about that. Generally, they were holding them, I believe, at their own office.
Okay,
But,
just, it doesn't say, and I have had a few people ask, so,
Yeah.
okay.
We'll be in touch, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. And that's all for me, thanks.
Thank you. Anything else out of the ring file? Councillor Pearson or Councillor, well, I guess, Councillor MacLean, we haven't heard from you tonight.
I had a couple of things to pull. One of them was the update on the Columbia River Treaty Local Governments Committee. There's an update on committee activities that I won't go through it, but if anyone was interested in hearing what we do during our many telecoms and Zoom meetings, there's an update on that available. The second thing was also related to that, which is the Columbia River Treaty Discussion Paper Overview of Agricultural Interests in the BC Columbia Basin and Existing Initiatives or Programs. So this would be of interest to anyone that is involved in agriculture here. I encourage you to go to the website. Given in the reading file, the written submission is Columbia River Treaty at gov.bc.ca. They have compiled a table of, it's an overview of agricultural interests in the BC Columbia Basin and existing programs and initiatives. So to address what's been lost by the flooding and the dam structure, they have compiled a table of things that could help people who are interested in either getting into agriculture or who are currently involved in agriculture. So if you get any time at all and you're interested in this, there's an opportunity for written submissions on what gaps might be in helping people, whether you're a farmer, rancher, producer, food processor, agriculture product supplier. I mean, the list goes on. But this is your chance to give your input into what gaps could be addressed or things that we should be addressing to help agriculture in our region.
Excellent. Anything further, Councillor? Gauged your interest?
No, thank you.
Councillor Pearson?
Excuse me. Yeah, just comments on items, where are we, 13 and 14, regarding our local IGA. I think we're all understand the community's frustration, but I think if we look at the bigger picture, they kind of got hit with the perfect storm situation in an older building. Roofing company come in and basically tarred over all the vents to eliminate any airflow, and a once-in-a-century heat dome that kind of killed everything. And I mean, none of that was new equipment, so they are doing their best, and they're slowly getting it back in with a new management team. And so hopefully they'll get everything straight, and we have a steady supply of meat and dairy for the next little while, so.
Yeah. Well, on that, I'm hoping, because much of the reading file is redacted for contact info, I'll be reaching out to staff to at least respond to those that reach out to council and provide them with the information that we have, and to thank them for being on the public record.
Yeah.
And of course, Mr. Buckley's email address too, please. Anything further, Councillor?
No, that's all for me.
Cross.
I think it's of note too that staff did reach out to IG and ask if they needed anything. So council was aware and they did reach out, and there was that conversation happened, so.
You bet. Without contravening section 25 of the community charter. There wasn't anything else, Councillor? Councillor G, before I jump in, did you have anything? No? You got it. Just one of the things, of course, there's the RDFFG board highlights from June and July. Councillor Pearson was there in July, so if you have any questions about it, by all means, you can address it during council reports. Does council have any wish to meet with opposition during UBCM, so with the BC Liberals, interim leader Shirley Bond and or legislature critics on any topic? Keep it in mind.
Yeah.
I don't think we need a resolution right this second. So if there's anything that's irking you at government and it's not being handled by government, that's what the opposition is there for. And then my other one is for the District of Sicamous Outdoor Rec UBCM support. Tonight, I'm seeking council support for Sicamous through a letter directly to the Ministry of Forests rather than UBCM, particularly regarding Section 56 of the Forest Range Practices Act, quote-unquote, recreation site level objectives pertaining to snowmobile-specific trails and accesses. I can forward that on to staff if there's a seconder. Or is there a first? First. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, thank you very much. Any discussion? Councillor Pearson?
Just interesting that recreation is the only value in the out there that doesn't have a declared value to be protected from other interests in the area. So, yeah, hopefully we can protect some of that.
Indeed. Indeed. Further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. And and of course, the CN funding from the former Premier Christy Clark. Make sure you get that out and about to all your nonprofit organizations as they are not committing, but they are willing to commit to nonprofits, and their charitable donations have been in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. So, and that's all for me. On to administrative reports, 8.1. We have a building inspection report. Did you get it all in favor on that?
No, we need to receive and.
Oh, we don't receive the reading file.
Oh, sorry.
But we do have an all in favor on the District of Sicamous.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, that we do.
Thank you. 8.1, building inspection report for June 2021. The permit values, the report be received. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, discussion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Higher than average. Those are great words to hear. Further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 8.2, accounts payable report for June 2021 to be received. Councillor G, Councillor MacLean. Any discussion on the accounts receivable report? Thank you very much, Mrs. McNee. All in favor? It's carried. 8.3, we have a 2021 quarterly budget report to be received. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor G, discussion on the quarterly. Very good work. All in favor? It's carried. 8.4, we do have a request from the Belmont Secondary School, and there is a recommendation here that the rainbow crosswalk be installed across Ash Street at the 9th Avenue and Ash Street intersection to celebrate diversity in the community and across Canadian society. What is council's wish? Councillor Blanchette, Councillor G, discussion.
Fantastic. It's about time.
Further, if you recall from the very first all candidates forum that we all participated in, there was a question. The very first question of that forum actually was from Jakarta Hiraway, and he had mentioned and asked how this council would be connecting and working with youth in the community. And there was this, this is one way this council can really connect with youth to offer them diversity and inclusivity in the place that they will learn the most throughout their learning career. Further discussion?
It's
All-
a great initiative.
All in favor? Carried. 8.5, formation of an independent destination marketing organization, herein DMO. A couple recommendations here that staff and tourism Valemount committee members be authorized to start the process of forming an independent DMO as recommended in the government study prepared by Stormy Lake Consulting. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Blanchette, discussion. Good to go?
Good to go. It's going to be an interesting process, but
We discussed a lot.
You got 5 months.
6.
6. All right. Further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. And a second recommendation that the village maintains the marketing coordinator position at the current work hours, 24 hours per week, during the transition time until December 31st, 2021. Councillor G, Councillor Pearson, discussion? Good. All in favor? It's carried. We do have a temporary use permit to consider under 8.6. It's application TUP 2101 Trans Mountain Expansion Project Contractor Yard. And I again need to declare a pecuniary interest in this item. So, Councillor Pearson. Excuse me. Make it bigger.
Okay, we'll carry on with item 8.6, temporary use permit application TUP 21-01, Trans Mountain Expansion Project Contractor Yard. We have recommendation that temporary use permit 21-01 for 1755 Highway 5 South, legally described as Block F of the southeast quarter of District Lot 7354, Caribou District, proposing a temporary contractor's yard be approved. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor G. Discussion.
They're trying to work their best with what they've got, and they seem to be answering every complaint, concern, or issue. I think it's fabulous. I wish every company would be like that, so, yeah.
Okay. Anything further? No further discussion. All in favor? Carried. Just leave them out there. We'll carry on.
I'm gonna say you said that. He's gonna see this.
You'll see it on
You're
tape.
gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna have to give Rashmi a stipend.
He's got to stick closer to the door, though.
Wait to see what he said.
Now we should review the tapes. Thank you, Councillor.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Under 8.7, we have a bylaw enforcement summary report, April through June 21, so quarterly, to be received for information. Councillor Pearson, Councillor G, any discussion on our first bylaw summary from Mr. Smith?
There it is.
Councillor Blanchette?
Thank you, very well done. Welcome to the team. Very nice man to talk to. And I like the fact that he's wanting to do education. I think that's a perfect thing. Yeah.
Hold that thought.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's received. 8.8, remedial action at 1200 Railway Road. There is a recommendation that council authorizes staff to deliver a notice to the property owner at 1200 Railway Road and each holder of a registered charge via registered mail. which states that all hazard trees must be removed no later than August 22nd, 2021. 26, thank you very much, 26, 2021. Should action not be taken by the property owner by this time, council authorizes staff to proceed with remedial action with regards to the fire hazard at 1200 Railway Road property legally described as Lot 2, District Lot 7356, Caribou District Plan 11529, PID 006395732, at the expense of the property owner as per section 77 and 78 of the Community Charter. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Blanchette, discussion. Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, it's nice to see this moving forward. This piece of property being adjacent to the railroad tracks is definitely has a potential for being a problem, and we have seen a grass fire in that area earlier this year already. So I know in talking with the bylaw officer that he is making that stretch a bit of a focus for education along commercial railway, Cedar, that whole little, and particularly the common walking path from Cedar to Main Street across the tracks. So
Definitely has potential there.
yeah.
Further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Under bylaws and policies, 9.1, Village of Belmont Woodstove Regulation Bylaw number 834 be adopted. 834 2021 be adopted as presented.
838.
838, why does that always escape me?
Need these glasses here?
Maybe. Not yet, but next year. Let's start that again. The Village of Belmont Woodstove Regulation Bylaw number 838 2021 be adopted as presented. Councillor G, Councillor Blanchette, discussion. Councillor Blanchette.
Huge thank you to staff for getting this in. It's fabulous. A lot of work went into this.
And much thanks to the Clean Air Task Force and your partners there. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 9.2, Village of Valemount Cemetery Amendment Bylaw number 846, 2021. Recommendation here that the Village of Valemount Cemetery Bylaw number 685, 2012, Amendment Bylaw number 846, 2021 be adopted as presented. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor G, any discussion on final adoption? All in favor? It's carried. Village of Belmont zoning bylaw number 847, 2021. Recommendation here is the Village of Belmont zoning bylaw number 847, 2021 be given third reading as amended. Councillor G, Councillor Pearson, discussion. Councillor Blanchette.
I'd just like to address Ms. Park. She did sort of, thank you for the letter. I'd like to hear from engaged citizens. But I just want to mention that, you know, while we appreciate the letter, the OCP process was long, expensive, and really in-depth. And we may not be doing something right now, but the whole purpose is that this is a look into the future. So we may do something in the future. So that's why we may not have something on the books right now, but there will be at some point.
Further discussion? And there certainly isn't anything within this letter that, from Ms. Park, that suggests, or any, there should be no information flowing from the village that suggests that she cannot rezone in the future and ask for an OCP amendment. Any further discussion? All in favor? Third reading passes. Do have a 9.4 Village of Valemount Temporary Residential Structures Policy number 83, 2021, and a recommendation here that the policy number 83, 2021 be approved. Councillor Pearson, Councillor G. Discussion. Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, just looking at the, I mean, you know, we have to be aware of the situation in the community, but things have sort of taken a turn. So we have a lot of RVs, and so I think we do have to look at having something in place to be able to control how they're set up and managed for the long term. My question originally was, because this is a policy, what power that has it, but this policy reinforces the current bylaw, which doesn't allow for this use, so I think we are covered with that. And my only concern would be, I guess, in discussion with the building inspector, because a permanent dwelling needs to have a snow load rating for a roof, and I'm not sure that many RVs are designed to be sitting with a snow load on them, but something to consider going forward.
Good point. Further discussion? So just a hypothetical, or even rhetorical, no one has to answer. We find some infringements. They're either within setbacks, they're not adhering to the water bylaw, which means they have to have a backflow valve. They fail to remedy that. We say, okay, now you have to leave. Where do they go? Where do they go? They're not going to Canoe River Campground. They're actually booked for like the next 3 years. Irvin's RV, same thing. Belmont Pines, same thing. Worker accommodation, as we found out, is maxed. We will see some reprieve fourth quarter when the camp in Blue River is up. Is there a business case here for a municipal campground? Temporary or permanent? Something to consider in the future.
And
Staff's eyes just went.
I don't have a very good poker face.
It's like,
Councillor Pearson.
and really, that could be an opportunity for a conversation for a community Trans Mountain partnership as a legacy project. I mean, it's their employers or employees that we're finding a way to accommodate in the community, to do it in the safest way, because there's lots of concerns. I mean, gray water, I mean, how many hoses are going to be running out the back of trailers into the ground or into Swift Creek? So that could be an opportunity for a conversation.
Certainly, as this policy could be rolling out, should council approve it, we'll have some statistics to back that up. Further discussion? So we're not going with the municipal campground right now, just so everyone's aware. All in favor? Carried. It's still there. No new business this evening, but is there any notice of motion anybody would like to bring forward? Hearing none, under 12.1, council reports. Councillor G, what have you been up to for the last 5 weeks?
Lots, but nothing council related to report.
Good.
Hopefully it's fun stuff.
Not really.
I'm doing it summer, right?
Councillor Blanchette, you must have something.
I have lots too, only a few things actually from council, because summer is the time off. On the 23rd, we've been doing the design lab. I just want to say it's been really interesting, really involved, a lot of fun. And we did some patient journey mapping as well on the 12th, where we brought patients in together and they all discussed what it's like to be a patient here in Belmont. What happens, you know, where do you go? Who do you talk to? How does everything work? What happens when you go out of the community? How does that work? And I believe in September or the end of August, we'll be meeting with we'll have patients and the providers together saying, this is how this works from our end and this is how it works from their end. So it's going to be quite informative. The hearing clinic was here on June 27th, 28th. It was a huge success. And we're hoping to be able to do the eye clinic and the hearing clinic again next year. And they were both brought here by the funding from the UBCM grant. And so thank you for that, because that was wonderful. We've utilized it every year. And on the 15th, we had a housing meeting. And that is all.
Excellent. Sorry, I didn't catch most of that. Oh, hearing clinic,
Yeah, you
right.
didn't go to the hearing clinic, did you? You need the icon.
That's right. Councillor MacLean.
Since the last council meeting on June 23rd, I attended the online meeting of the Columbia Basin Trust Local Government Committee meeting. On the 24th, I also attended an online meeting, but this was of CBRAC. This was an update on treaty-related community interest projects, including Valemount's Air Quality Project, the CRT Heritage Project, and the BC CRT Team's Agriculture Discussion Paper, which was included in the reading file links for tonight's council meeting agenda. On July 20th, I attended a Belmont Entertainment Society meeting, and on the 21st, I attended CBRAC's webinar, BC Hydro Integrated Resource Plan Update, and that was it for me.
Thank you. Councillor Pearson?
Alrighty. First of all, thank you for bringing in the hearing clinic. I did take advantage of it. They proved my wife wrong. I can hear fine. No, it's much needed for that to come to the community, so it was very nice to take advantage of that. So, July 6th, tourism Belmont meeting. And that's a meeting where we had the discussion to move forward towards an independent DMO versus the Committee of Council. And I believe it was July 12th. I didn't have the exact date, but as an Operation Lifesaver Ambassador, excuse me, thank you to Village Public Works for the installation of 4 Look, Listen, and Live stickers. They're applied directly to the asphalt on either side of the 2 crossings, the 5th Avenue and Dogwood Street, and yeah, they're quite visible. So hopefully we'll see how they hold up. So I thank you for that. July 14th, I was racing towards Prince George trying to find cell service to dial in for the Northern Interior Rural Division, Robson Valley Mackenzie Regional Subcommittee Primary Care Network call. And that involves medical professionals and support from Mackenzie, Vanderhoof, Fort St. James, McBride, and here. Not sure why I'm on that call, because everybody has initials after their name except me, I think. So very good conversation towards staff retention and filling spots for community. Social workers are needed in every community of the network. Trying to get primary care nurses. It's ongoing work. There has been some positive steps for some of the communities. So July 15th, I sat in for Mayor Torgerson as director for the Regional District Fraser Fort George meetings, which are a full day, 9:30 until 4-ish. Quite enlightening. They deal with a lot of different departments and a lot of different things. And a couple things of note, the announcement was made of the financial assistance for the CVRC, or Canoe Valley Rec Center, and Robson Valley Rec Center upgrades for their chillers, which will reduce the amount of ammonia on site, which in the long term will be a cost saving because the staff won't need as high a degree of ticket for dealing with the plants. And it won't need 24-hour plant checks and stuff. So that was a huge windfall for both communities. And I also raised the issue, for a delegation from BC Emergency Health Services at the regional district level as well. So it was kind of interesting timing because I was thrown under the bus that I was doing this presentation at the regional district meeting, but as I'm sort of preparing to do this, Minister Dix made his announcement of the total revamp of the BC Emergency Health Service, so it was like, well, kind of anticlimactic at this point, so. And that was it for me.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for both on July 12th for meeting with me to discuss the agenda and for representing Valemount at the regional level on the 15th. June 24th, had a North Regional call with Minister Osborne and Minister Eby around the state of housing. Some really cool projects coming out of the North. We're simply not the only community that's struggling with that file. Later that day, had a connectivity call with Minister Bear and Minister Ralston and Parliamentary Secretary Russell on most around infrastructure needs when it comes to connectivity and who's providing what and for what cost. So, for example, BC Hydro has the poles. They do not come free. They are $20 or $45 to $50 per pole per year. So if you're thinking about somebody that's trying to strive for high-speed internet in a rural area and that backbone of fiber, say, is in Slocan and are trying to get it up to Silverton, that's a lot of rental. And that really doesn't have a business case for any small or large ISPs for that matter. So really trying to hit home cost bearing to Minister Ralston as he's in charge of BC Hydro. On June 28th, I didn't attend, but I did watch the pre-Canada Day provincial COVID briefing. Premier Horgan making a hint that we would be moving to step 3 on July 1st. June 29th, had a COVID briefing with Belmont Emergency Services in and around the same thing. What step 3 looks like, both legislatively and from a municipal standpoint and from their agency standpoint. My understanding is the RD, the Belmont Fire Department, is still doing 2 days of training versus 1 to split up their crews. A bit more time commitment for their training officers, but at least they're keeping their groups smaller. Looking forward to seeing how they progress moving to step 4. I had an interesting call from the Columbia Shuswap Regional District Area A, Karen Cathcart, Director Karen Cathcart, about the heritage file and what that looks like around governance on the Kim basket. So obviously I give her your contact info, Councillor MacLean, but I did bring up the fact that we don't have any connectors between here and there. And so we started going back and forth on what a trail might look like, utilizing the existing Forest Service roads. And, you know, I started mapping it out. There's only about 26 kilometers of unconnected, unconnectivity between as far as you can get on the West Forest Service Road and Foster Arm. And it's through a protected area, so I reached out to Sandy MacLean Sandy McKenzie at Rec Sites and Trails to see what that looks like for maybe a hand-beaten or a small trail that goes through a protected area, because there is a protected area there. Yeah, we'll see where that goes. Of course, July 1st, we had the start of step 3, BC reopening. Later into the weekend on July 4th, I attended the Wayne Chanel tournament at the Valemount Cemetery. Of course, giving my condolences to his boys. Wayne was a longtime employee and a loyal employee of the Village of Belmont. On July 7th, at the Southeast BC Connectivity Committee, we had a presentation from Rogers Media. They are amalgamating with Shaw in a multi-billion-dollar merger. It's before the Security Commission right now, but they are committing $1 billion to rural and remote connectivity throughout Canada. So we wanted to hear what they had to say about our little neck of the woods. Again, July 12th, thank you, Councillor Pearson, for meeting with me for the RD agenda. And then on July 13th, we had our last we're taking a pause from the COVID briefing with Valemount Emergency Services, and we'll meet again as necessary, but 65 briefings since March 31st of last year. So hats off to Sergeant Dean, Corporal Jocelyn, Dr. Markham, Fire Chief Rick Lalonde, and Paramedic Chief Derek McClure, as well as village staff. So sad to see him go, but happy at the same time that we're moving forward to step 4. Joined Councillor Pearson on the 14th with the Mackenzie Robson Valley Regional Subnetwork Working Group with the Northern Interior Regional Development Primary Care Network. One thing I will raise that Councillor Pearson didn't, we can help our local real estate professionals point out the fact that we have professional jobs here. And so that might be an attraction in their little blurb on the backside of the Rocky Mountain Goat or in their brochures that there is a professional working group in medicine, which could be an attractant. Later that day, I had a primary connectivity technology discussion with Monashi Communications. They're working on some new ideas to up their service ratings here in the village. And then that evening on July 14th, I had an interview with CBC reporter Justin McElroy. He's doing a bit of a fun challenge. He's known out in the world as the bracket maker and the chart maker. So we are being considered for BC's best small town. The 15th, from Salmon Arm, I chaired the Regional District Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee meeting. It was really hot. Corey took the keys. Windows were up. There was nothing I could do but just sweat. Because I was going on July 16th and 17th to the CBT board meetings. Of course, we all know and that was in Trail, BC. As we all know, July 20th, we had an announcement from the Public Safety Minister, Farnworth, we're now under a BC state of emergency due to wildfires. That'll be in effect until August the 4th, and they'll reconsider. And then July 22nd, I took part in a virtual attendance at the Columbia Basin Trust's 25th anniversary celebration. In attendance there in Castlegar was Premier Horgan, Minister Conroy, and MLA Anderson. So hats off to CBT staff and their board. We were supposed to do this last year, but of course circumstances came up. But yeah, the IT staff were able to connect all 4 offices and all directors while we heard from the Premier. Interesting anecdote that as a staffer, Premier Horgan was integral in the creation of the Columbia Basin Trust. Yeah, just some fantastic stories. We're hoping to get them published right soon so everybody can hear those little funny stories. I made an introduction on behalf of Monashi Communications on July 23rd to the Chief Operating Officer of the Columbia Basin Broadband Corp about those technology discussions and see how that can be moved forward quickly. The Broadband Corp is fairly flexible. We'll see how some case studies coming out of the States can reflect how it can work here and in other basin communities. And then lastly, received a letter on July 23rd from the Ministry of Environment concerning our full air zone report, which is forthcoming. I did share with council via email. We're number 1 again. It's not the best place to be when you're looking at the worst air quality in British Columbia. However, I do like how they signed off on the letter as they look forward to our collaboration to address the local air quality issues in Valemount. This will be coming to the reading file to be on the public record in the next council meeting, but I'm looking for council support to address Ms. Nash and the Protection Division of the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy to bring them both up to speed of tonight's approval of the wood stove bylaw, as well as where we're at with our district heating project. Really nothing to give them an update on, I just want to bring them up to speed of where we're at, and of course, waiting for funding. So, just want to bring that to their attention so they know the Clean Air Task Force, which they addressed in the letter, by the way, is doing great work, but just to bring them up to speed on the current and the future. So that's my report. Motion to receive. Questions? Comments?
Not very busy, are you?
5 weeks. What's the take, Councillor MacLean, with with the local government committee and the agriculture portion? Are you getting a sense it's more focused on the southern end of the basin? Any feedback from CBRAC, as there's a lot more representation there?
Not yet. This is still out there, and the feedback runs until September 15th at 4 Pacific time. So it's just actually been put out there. It's just starting.
And what sort of feedback did you get on the Kinbasket dust through CBRAC?
I don't recall through CBRAC, but just the gist of the report was that it's not dust from the lake, it's local dust produced in town.
We had our,
Task force?
yeah.
Yep.
Was there any consideration at either one about the content of the dust being silica or the more soft sand that we see in town?
Well, it may not even be, it could be emissions from vehicles or off wheels of vehicles as well, or, so I didn't get a sense of that. Have you?
It was so long, a while ago, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to remember, she had mentioned something, but I don't
Yeah.
quite remember, do you?
It was the smaller particulate rather than the large, yeah.
There was also discussion about the type of silica, whether it was the crystalline or amorphous. And that's,
Crystalline's more abrasive, amorphous being softer.
so that's the information that they need to determine is what kind of silicate that would be.
Okay, well, looking forward to that.
Shouldn't be hard to find a sample.
No, not at all. Any further comments? All in favor to receive? Well, I guess Pearson and Blanchette. Yeah, carried. Thank you for that. Where are we at? Oh, public comment. Man, it's gonna be weird. Under 14.1, we do have an opportunity to hear from public comments on items considered by council as part of the approved agenda. Is there any public comments this evening? Good evening.
It's been a long time. I'm Rashmi Narayan, and I live in Belmont. I just wanted to comment on a couple of things. I wasn't planning to, but the Trans Mountain presentation about accommodations, I won't say I was. There have been a lot of concerns on the housing committee that there is not enough accommodations, and Councillor Blanchette, you suggested how if they can extend the camps, and the kind of load that's coming on the local population is worthwhile to go back and consider that 500 more people is a lot of people, and I think council should definitely look at what it means for them to go back and look at having more people in the camp, because it is too much for our town. The other thing is, Mayor Torgerson, you mentioned the municipal campground. That was one thing we discussed at our housing committee as well. Not the municipal campground, but because we have that OCP and the OCP process identified the Ash Street property for future uses and has looked at that development of that property, whether we can, whether it might make sense for the village to enter into some kind of partnership with Trans Mountain to offer that space, some of that space for RVs. And I just looked through the agenda items. I don't know the policy on the temporary residential structures. I haven't read through that. But I just want to say it was something that was discussed at our committee level, just in terms of the impact that's, on housing in the community. That, and I had one more comment. You guys were discussing about meeting Northern Health at the UBCM, and I would like you guys to talk to Northern Health. This is with my, Belmont Care Seniors Housing Society hat on, that we are looking, I'm going to have my first conversations with them in early September about how Northern Health can look at supporting services at the new Belmont Cares facility. And this could be an opportunity to tell them, because this is like budgeting 2 years down the line, but supportive living and assisted living, because that kind of funding comes from Northern Health. So this would be a great opportunity for you guys.
Thank you very much.
Can we ask a question?
Sure. It's our first day back.
I'm just wondering if maybe Ms. Narian can put a few little points together, and then we've got something to take with us on our meeting with UBCM?
Certainly hoping when she has her meeting in the first week
Or
with
you-
Northern Health,
Oh, okay,
we could back her.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there further public comments from the, awfully quiet back there, Michael. Here. Oh, yeah. Motion to receive, please. Councillor MacLean, Councillor Pearson, discussion on public comments. Should have been answered then, so all in favor of receipt, it's carried. Under 15.1, I hereby give notice to proceed in camera. The recommendation here that council proceed to an in-camera meeting for the consideration of one item per section 91I of the community charter to discuss matters related to I, the receipt of advice that is subject to the solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purposes, with respect to the Valemount Community Forest proposed joint working group. What's council's wish? Councillor Pearson, Councillor G, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you all for coming.